good morning. And for a change, it is a good morning. It seems like it's the Englishman's birthright to moan about the weather, and if you own a boat, you've got twice the reason. But this year has been shocking. I've taken a cheeky Friday off because the weather's due to come in again tomorrow, near gale force winds, and that's it for the foreseeable. So luckily, there seems to be a gap in the weather today. So I've got a little plan. I'll have a look at the estuary for you. It's a little bit overcast. There is a little bit of west wind forecast, and it has been windy previously in the week, so we'll see what the sea conditions bring. But I've got a rough plan. I'm out on a 2 tide day, so that's really nice. You might be able to see from the condition of the estuary. I'm going out just after high water, so that's really efficient. So I'm going with the tide, sipping fuel to do the 4-mile trip down to Salcombe and out to sea. So we'll get to the bar and see what the conditions are like. If I can do it, I've got a nice reef that I like to fish on, which is a distance out, and then a little bit further than that, I've got a new wreck mark, which is a big wreck, which I want to try. So for anybody that watched my last video about tides, although I'm leaving on high water now, where I'm going is going to be about 3 hours time for high water. So I'm hoping, if the weather will allow, to stop at the reef. It's not going to be on the full strength of the tide, so my plan is to do a bit of bait fishing on the reef, then go out to the wreck to fish slack water high as the tide goes fully in, and then before it starts to go out again. And then as the tide picks up on the ebb on the wreck, I'll come back to the reef, and as the tide picks up on the reef, it should be good for lure fishing. That's the plan. The freezer is completely empty. The only fish that we've got in the house is tins of tuna, so we need to address that. I'd like to get some mackerel, always like to get some mackerel, and any whitefish I can find would be fantastic. So what I've got is, I'll talk about these in a bit. I've got 3 rods set up, 1 with mackerel feathers and 2 with slightly different rigs on for the reef and the wreck, but I'll show you those if I get an opportunity to use them. I'll also get a little bit further down and have a little bit of a chat with you about the weather. Lots of people asked how I assess the weather. David was the most recent one. Thank you for your comment, David. And I'll have a little bit of a chat with you when I get a bit further down about how I assess the weather for the day's fishing. I'll see you in a bit. So here we are, just passing Salcombe on the way out. Worst places to have a mug of tea and breakfast coming down the estuary. So yeah, while I'm heading out, a little chat about assessing the weather. There are different websites. People have their favourites. It's whatever you're confident with, really. XC weather, windy, whatever. I tend to just use the BBC for a general picture. Then I'm lucky enough to have National Coast Watch Institution lookout station close to us, as well as the weather gauges, pressure gauges, etc. that they have there, which you can see online. They've got an east-facing webcam, a west-facing webcam, so you can have a look at actual conditions. And they've also got easy links to the other things that I use. So they've got the shipping forecast, the inshore waters forecast, and synoptic chart, if you know a little bit about the weather, to have a look at the chart. The bottom line is, there are only 2 occasions you can really trust the weather forecast. If it's been calm for days and it's forecast to be calm, it's easy. If it's been 4-7 for days and it's forecast 4-7, it's also easy. For everything else, the key is flexibility, really. You can't, I mean, you might have a rule of thumb, it's up to you really. If it's force 4, you're not going out. If it's force 3, you might. But you've still got to be flexible, because you just never know. And a lot of that depends on what your run for home options are. So I'm on the south coast. The prevailing wind is generally from the southwest. We've got westerlies forecast for today. So I'm going out to the southwest. It's a good tide to, a bit breezy here, it's a good tide to go and fish the skerries. but that would mean going into the sea coming home, and if the wind picks up, I've got two fairly prominent headlands that the tides and winds can whip things up to being really quite horrible. So I won't go to the Skerries. If I was going to the Skerries, then my run for home option, if I've got it all wrong, excuse me, would be to pull into Dartmouth. That's inconvenient, it was a little bit embarrassing, it's going to cost me in a taxi, but if you get it wrong, there are worse things to endure than a little bit of embarrassment and inconvenience. Yeah, so flexibility. So today's plan, the wind is forecast to get up a bit from the west, so I'm going to the west. This boat is really good in a following sea, so if it does pick up a little bit or start picking up, I can change the plan, always get back into the river, and in gale force winds I can get back on my mooring, and I'll be there long before it gets up to gale force. So yeah, it depends on your situation. If you're coming back onto a trailer or if you're beach launching, it's a very different scenario. If you've got a safe run for home, again, it depends on your boat, your confidence, and just being flexible really. And if you're sensible and flexible, boating is a really safe and fun pastime. It's just a little bit frustrating the number of times you can't go out. So here we are, just come into the mouth. The bar looks good, the horizon looks flat. You can get clues looking at the horizon. If it's all wiggly and if it's white, it's going to be horrible. It looks acceptable, but again, flexibility is the key. I'm planning to go reefs and wrecks. If I have to change that to the inshore wrecks, I'll do that. If I have to change it to staying in the river or close to the bar, casting a lure around for some bass, then I'll do that. Hopefully we'll achieve the plan. I'll see what it's like assessing as I go along, and see you out there. So we've made it out to the reef. Conditions are decent out here. There's a bit of a slop coming in, or chop really, from the southwest. Right, so I've got some mackerel feathers. I'm just going to have a couple of drifts here because we've got wind with tide, so it's drifting us a little bit faster than I was hoping. Anyway, so what we've got is, this is my ugly stick GX2, 12 to 20 pound class, with Penn Fathom 2-speed lever drag. That's the 15 size. And then on the business end we've got just a short boom, short trace, about 18 inches. That's going on to a Coxon Roll 4.0. I forget what they call that one. It's an Aberdeen style, but just slightly thicker wire, and with a sand eel flapper. So we'll get that one on the bottom. And more than likely get nibbled to death by pout, but we live in hope. Yeah, I don't want to miss slackwater high on the wreck, so I'll have half an hour here, see what it does. I've got a 6-ounce lead on because we're in 40 metres of water, but drifting at a knot and a half. I was hoping it was going to be a little bit less than that, and it's also pushing us on a direction where I'm only going to have a shortish drift over the area that I wanted to fish. I've got a target species in mind, but I'm not saying that. Something's taken an interest in that flapper. I'll just give it a bit of line. Still there. I think I've missed that one. Well, you can see that something's had a go at it, but not at the hook end, unfortunately. We'll rebait and go around for another go. I've rebaited. This one's a much bigger launch, so I've taken the fillet off it and just hooked through the thin end. If you hook it through the thick end, it'll spin on the way down and tangle around the boom. It's just obviously not fishing well. So yeah, just once through the thin end, and hopefully it'll present itself nicely. Swap sides. I think this wind's playing havoc a little bit. Something's taking an interest in that fillet. It's always tricky with a long bait though. Do you give it line and let it chomp its way to the hook, or do you strike? You'll get it wrong as often as you get it right. And on this occasion, I got it wrong. Well, I've had two drifts now and had two really quite good bites. One with the flapper, one with the fillet. So just going to try the sand eel or lawn's head now in part of the fillet. The bites are about the same place. It doesn't feel like pout. There, I've said it now. Pout are a very rattly bite, quite aggressive but rattly, and it didn't feel like that. It could be dogfish. Could be spur dog, could be anything really. I'm hoping it's turbot. There, I've said it now. So try with this shorter bait, see if we can see if we get the bite again, and see if we can hook into it. There we are on the bottom. A shorter drift this time, just see if we can pick it up from the same point. And if this one produces nothing, we'll head out to that wreck. There it is, biting again. Nope. So I've arrived at the wreck. Had a little go on the reef, a few bites, but that didn't produce anything. But I really wanted to get out here for the tide. So we're about, I reckon, about half an hour away from high water slack, but the wind is still, it's getting up a little bit, so we're drifting at 1.4 knots, which is okay. It's a little bit faster than I would want. So I've got the drogue ready. I'll put the drogue out for the first drift, and that will hopefully take maybe half a knot off it, which will be great. So here we've got, I'm using a Penn TRQ 12 to 20 pound braid rod with a Penn Fathom lever drag. This is a 30 pound size, oh sorry, a 30 size, and then we've got, this could not be simpler. I've got a length of 50 pound line. If I'm fishing for bass or something like that, then for the hook trace I use fluorocarbon. For this it's just not important, so it's just cheap mono, 50 pound mono. There's if you can see that at all, just a figure of 8 loop knot, so that goes onto the swivel from the main line. A length down to, if I can untangle it, just a dropper loop or a paternoster loop. That's ideal, because it means you can just easily swap out the hooks, or you can put another hook on it for bait presentation if you want. That's Cox and Roll Sea Beast, an 8/0, and then further down to another figure of 8 loop with an 8-ounce lead on it. I've seen which way the drift is now, so I'll reposition and we'll give it a go. Right, this is, sorry about the sun, that's the only way the drift's working. This is a big wreck in deep water, in 70 metres of water, and the wreck comes up to about 62, so obviously an 8 metre high wreck. Just settling down on the drift nicely. The drogue's out. That's slowed us down to 1.1, so that's okay. And we will pop that down. I've got an 8-ounce lead on because of the depth of water, but also to just try and keep it as vertical as possible. You're obviously going to get some drift angle, but the more vertical the line is, the less chance of snagging in the wreck. Always a chance when you're wreck fishing, it's part and parcel of it. I think this first drift's going to work out okay. No fishing gear on this wreck, which is nice, or none that's visible anyway. Nicely on the wreck. Drift could be slower, but it's alright, acceptable. Are there any fish there? Are there any fish there, and do they want my mackerel? We found something. Not what I wanted for the first haul. It is a big one, but it's a big pout. See if he'll go back. So he'll bring that up quite slowly. Oh yeah. No, it's come up again. Well, there's life on the wreck, which is good. I will put some water in that bucket and see if that one will recover. I don't really want to fish that size for bait or anything, so its eyes look alright. Hopefully it'll recover in a bit, and we'll reposition and go around again. Settling into drift number 2. Managed to set it up the other way around, so hopefully you're not just looking at a silhouette of me this time. And the sun's coming out. I think that breeze is gradually going to get stronger today. Hope it's not coming on the camera too much. But the drogue's doing a good job slowing us down. Yeah, a knot, 1.1 knots. There we are. I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but there's a bit of an underlying swell, which just makes keeping it on the wreck a little bit more awkward. Don't want to let the slack line out, 'cause you'll get snagged, but equally there's no point in being suspended above the wreck. Boat number 2. Something altogether smellier to go down this time. So we've got about 3/4 of a launce with 2 of the Veterans Bait Supplies crab cart and squid whipped onto it, and a slightly different bit of the wreck hopefully as well. I've not fished this wreck before, as I think I said, so yeah, just a bit of an explore really. There's obviously life down there. There must be something feeding on the pouting. Oh, let's hope so anyway. Got something. I just trimmed the hook and bait size down a little bit, so we've gone down to a size 7 from an 8 and just put a mackerel fillet on. It's a decent size, hopefully not another big pout. Oh, I hope my battery lasts. Got some colour. I don't believe it. My neighbour's Labradors are going to feed well. The tide's just swinging, so I've just plonked myself right on top of the wreck. We'll see where this drift takes us. Bit of old fishing gear by the feel of it. You're always hopeful with a new wreck, but 8 pout now and 2 sets of gear. It's not really the right tides for it, but as I'm here I'm going to have a drift over with the lure, see if that does any good, and if it doesn't, now the tide's starting to ebb, I'm going to go back to the reef and have a look. But I'll tidy this up, have a re-rig, stick a lure on and just give that a drift. Yeah, the tide's just starting to swing, but the wind's still strong enough to keep pushing me in the same direction, so we've got wind against tide at the moment, which is makes bait fishing a little bit awkward. We'll give the lure a go. Might have 2 drifts actually. Might have a go with the lure, and then I might have a go with a slow jig as the tide's quite slack. Or I might just stick with this if it's good. Who knows? It's a nice day out here, and it's lovely to be out, but it's not the not exactly a balmy summer's day and glassy seas. And not much of a chance of a return to those by the look of the forecast. I'm not one of the people that's likely to throw orange confetti at an MP during their wedding. But you have to put a lot down to climate change. Everything's warmer, there's more energy in the global system, and that energy's got to go somewhere, so we get more wind and we get extremes of heat and floods. You probably can't see it on the camera, but now we've got wind against tide, my line is going out at probably 45 degrees. If you were trying to keep a bait on the bottom, you'd have no chance. I've lost 2 sets of gear as it is. You can definitely tell when you're on old fishing gear. You can lift it and then it goes absolutely solid. Ooh. Little nibble there. Yeah, you can lift it and then it goes absolutely solid, and you can try bouncing it out, but if your hook and barb's got embedded into some nylon, there's no way you're pulling that out. This is a real chancer of a drift. It's with this slack tide, it's not the predators won't be out hunting, but you never know. This wreck's a fair way out, so just purely because I'm here, I'm going to give it a try. One last try on this wreck with a slow jig. I've got my heaviest one on just because of the wind against tide situation. 160 grams I think it is. Hopefully time that right to get it down just as we arrive at the wreck. Swap around. Too bad, just coming up on the wreck now, hopefully. It is on the plotter, can't quite see it on the sounder yet. I want to arrive at the wreck before the lure gets swept too far downstream of us. Yeah, that's working okay actually, just coming up on it now. So these slow jigs, it's not the up action so much, but when it flutters back down, sort of simulating a dying fish that the ambush predators might come out for on the slack tide period. That's the hope, that's the theory. None of them are working so far today. Plenty of time. Certainly be interesting if that ambush predator was a 20-pound ling on this rod. Just drop the mackerel feathers down, arriving at the reef here, and pick something up. Feels more pollock-like than mackerel to me, but we will see in a minute. Ah, just dropped off, didn't even see what it was. It's quite awkward fishing at the moment. We've actually got no movement over the ground, so the tide is now ebbing, so the tide's got quite a movement in that direction, but the wind is blowing us in this direction, so the body of water is moving that way, so whatever, when you put your lures down or whatever, it's all going that way, but but the wind is holding us, so we're actually staying in the same position over the seabed. The boat is, but the tide is taking the lures that way, or feathers, or whatever we've got on. So yeah, the wreck didn't do it for us today. That was disappointing really for a new wreck. It's a bit breezy, but then the tides were favourable. We got there on slack tide, tried big baits, small baits, smelly baits, lures, slow jigs, and all we got was pout for our trouble. Nice big pout, admittedly. It's good to put a bend in the rod, but yeah, certainly not what I was hoping from the wreck. But there we go. That's fishing, not to worry. Still time on today's tides, so as long as this wind doesn't get up too much, it's absolutely fine at the moment. I'll put a lure down just because that's what I had set up on this rod. I think with the way we're not moving, it's probably going to favour putting a heavier weight on and some bait. I'll just have a couple of minutes with this, see if we actually do get anywhere over the water, and yeah, probably swap to baits in a minute. Just repositioned and to have a go with some bait, and the feathers have come good again. I reckon it's a pollock. Oh, it's not. It's a mess. We've got a string of mackerel. How does that happen? It wasn't left, they were just straight down. That's one to sort out at home. New set of mackerel feathers. Let's see if there's some more there. Well, the way today's fishing's going, I'm more than happy to just take a few mackerel. I'm hopeful of more than that. One mackerel and 2 pout. One for keeping and 2 for going. Right, let's reposition and have a go with some bait. Okay, some bait here. So we've just got part of a sand eel with some crab cart whipped on. That's a Cox and Roll Sea Beast 5.0. I like the Sea Beasts, they're a good versatile hook, nice and strong. All Cox and Roll stuff is strong, but nice and strong, good versatile hook, just like the shape of it really. I'll leave the mackerel feathers for a minute because I just want to drift over this point with the bait tight onto the bottom. Right, I think there's enough movement in the water for the lures to work now. But I've got 4 mackerel, I wouldn't mind a couple more, so pop the mackerel feathers down first and then fish this bit of reef with lures and see if it does any good. less excuses really. Oh, well, the lure hasn't disappointed. First drop in this new place. Quite fighty. First pollock of the day, and that is a lovely fish. There he is, lovely condition and very lively. So, that's going straight back. It's not been big on fish today, so you have to enjoy it when you get one. Found one at last. A lovely bass. Centimeters, so that one is for the table. See if there's another one down there. Oh, straight into another fish. And that is another similar sized fish. It's absolutely engulfed that sidewinder. I'll get that unhooked. That one's slightly smaller, but easily above 42, which is the takeable size. But you can only take 2 fish, so I'll keep them alive for a bit, and if there's a bigger one around, I'll swap them over. I was just starting to think the day was going to be a bit of a fishing write-off with the poor catch as it was. And then the sun comes out again and you catch a brace of bass and life is good. reef is good. It can be productive, but I was speaking to a commercial rod and line bass fisherman who comes out here occasionally out from Plymouth. He's got quite sophisticated gear on board, and he'll come and map the reef, and just before the tide's ready for the fish, he'll see where the fish are sat, and then when the tide's right, he'll go to that point and catch them. And he said sometimes there can be along the length of the reef, and you don't have to be very accurate, and other times if you're 50 yards away from them you won't catch any. They'll sit in a very narrow band. So I've been up and down this reef for the last hour or so, mainly catching nothing, and then catch a couple on the same drift. So maybe that's what's happening today. They're just in a narrow band. We'll see in a minute when I just see if we can replicate the drift. Whatever, I'm happy now. A couple of mackerel for the weekend, a couple of bass for the freezer. Perfect. You always want more. Tell me a fisherman that doesn't. More and bigger all the time. Something had a pluck at that one. Bass will often hit the fish, or hit the lure or your bait, so they'll swim past it and flick it with their tail, and you can feel that. You just carry on what you're doing, and they'll turn around and bite it, hopefully. I'll give this one more drift, see if we can pick any more bass up. If not, I'll head in and just see if I can't pick up a couple more mackerel on the way in, look for some bird activity, that sort of thing. But try this drift first. If it's productive, then it might stay for a little bit longer. There's always one more drift in it. We might have got a final fish. This one feels quite good. Bass. Don't think there's a lot in it actually, so this nice precious one can go back. Just landed another fish. It's I thought it was a pout, it was just a small fish off the bottom, so I didn't switch the camera on, but hold on, let me get the hook out of it. I was gonna say that it's the palest red gurnard I've ever seen, but it might be a small tub. See the little blue tinges just at the end of its dorsal end of its pectoral fins there? Not quite sure. Eyes are stunning, aren't they? Off my Right, I'm heading in for that. After that, that was really nice. I'll switch back on if I find some mackerel, and we'll have a chat when we're a bit closer. Right, that's me done for the day. We've had a little clean up, filleted the fish, stopped in this stunning little bay. Just sheltered from the breeze, so filleted the fish. They're on ice. Cleaned everything down because everything got salty and horrible. Yeah, just gonna have a coffee and cruise back up the river. I'll do a little time-lapse footage of going back up the river, see what it looks like going from the other direction. Yeah, a good day. A thankful little break in the weather. It was breezy, but you know, perfectly fine. A little bit rolly out there, but certainly nothing unacceptable, and a smooth ride back home with a following sea. Yeah, a little bit disappointed about the wreck, but hey, that's fishing. The tides were good. The wind wasn't so ideal, but there you go. Yeah, that just produced I think probably the biggest pout I've ever caught. Yeah, nice little pollock. That was a red gurnard, by the way. The little blue fringes put me off a little bit, but yeah, it was just a very dull red gurnard. Tubs have got smooth skin and reds have got rough skin, a little bit like a dogfish, not quite as coarse. So it's definitely a little red, just not as vibrant as they normally are. Some mackerel for the weekend, and yeah, and 3 nice bass, 2 on ice and 1 returned. Not sure when the next video is going to be. The forecast is absolutely awful again, starting from sometime tonight. But yeah, there will be another time, and I'll bring you with me. Thanks for watching. Cheers.